Welcome into SMU TV Studios. I'm Grace Lawrence.
I'm Peter Warner.
And I'm Grace Thompson.
And we are here with a Press Pass special edition pregame show. The SMU football Mustangs, they're going to take on the UCF Golden Knights tonight. Are you excited?
A little bit nervous, but very excited for Wednesday night football.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I would say the same. I'm really excited for a Wednesday night game. Should be fun, but yeah, I'm also nervous.
Exactly. So the game was originally supposed to be played on Saturday, October 1st, but due to Hurricane Ian, its impact on the Orlando area, the game was moved to tonight. So we're getting some special Wednesday night lights like we've been saying. Before we get into any game storylines, I want to start out with the stats. Peter, can you tell me more about those?
Yep. As always, ESPN FPI to start. We got 32.3% chance for the Mustangs to win, a lot lower than recent games, about the same as Maryland. Vegas has them as 2.5-point underdogs, so that means UCF minus 2.5, which has 59% of the money, so pretty split nationally according to the bets. And then the money line is minus 140 for UCF, plus 118 for the Mustangs, and again, they see a little bit less offense in the TCU game, but still a lot, 62.5 for the over-under.
Awesome. Let's get into some storylines now. A breaking story reported by On3. They said that 4 players are going to sit out in tonight's game because they want to preserve their eligibility and enter the portal when the season's over. Now, 2 guys have been confirmed, Chase Cromartie and Roderick Daniels Jr. Now, they've communicated they want to transfer. They're going to sit out. They haven't seen a ton of playing time this season, a little bit, but I wonder what your thoughts are on these players sitting out, the impact on the team. You know, we're going to see this across the entire college football landscape. You know, it's the week 5, conference play is ramping up, and players are going to want to sit out and preserve their eligibility.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that it's a smart call. I understand if players aren't seeing what they want to see on the field and getting the time that they want. I don't see why there's an issue with them, you know, kind of making the decision that's best for them. I saw Twitter was obviously up in arms saying that there's deep-rooted problems at SMU and it's the NIL era's fault. And I just think that all of that noise was simply that noise. I think that we're going to see this, as Grace said, on all sorts of teams across all conferences. And I don't know, I don't think it will make that big of an impact. Obviously, Daniels had that touchdown, but I don't know. I think we have a bunch of other strong players, and I don't think it will be that detrimental.
Definitely. Now, Peter, I wonder what you think about it.
Yeah, so I saw a tweet. One of the players had the most percentage of snaps in the Maryland and TCU game, which were obviously, you know, more important games. The highest of one of the players had played was around 20% of the snaps, which is not that many. So we're not really losing that much. Anything, it's depth. And it's not just an SMU story. I think it got blown out of proportion. People were like, SMU's in shambles. No, I mean, Boise State's starting quarterback already did the same thing. So it's not just SMU, it's a national thing, and it's not to do with NIL, it's just the transfer portal. And you want to save a year of eligibility, I totally get it. These players are expecting more playing time. If you're not getting it and you think you can get it somewhere else, where I would completely do the same thing. That's
a great point. I completely agree. Switching lanes a little bit, let's talk about Rhett Lashley and Gus Malzahn. Now, they have a long history together. So Gus, the long story short, Gus gave Rhett his kind of first big coaching gig. Rhett was the graduate assistant on the 2010 National Championship Auburn team. They had a guy named Cam Newton at quarterback. Like I said, they won that national championship. Pretty good start to your college football coaching career. Gus also coached Rhett. Their relationship started back in high school. Lashley was a fierce quarterback, learned under Malzahn's fast-paced offense, and they've really meshed. And back in the day at Auburn, so like I said, he was the GA. Then Rhett left for Samford. They reunite back at Arkansas State. Later, they go back to Auburn together. He's promoted then to the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach under a Gus Malzahn head coach team. So I'm curious what you think about their relationship, how well they knew each other. We saw it against TCU. Sonny and Rhett knew each other pretty well. These two know each other better than probably any other coaches when it comes to each other. So I'm curious what you're thinking about that.
Yeah. I think this relationship definitely differs from Sonny and Rhett's relationship pretty heavily. I would say that Malzahn is really a mentor to Rhett, and I think that makes it a little bit more emotional. I would say that not only having been coached by him and working alongside him on multiple different teams at different schools, I think that there's obviously way more respect flowing through that relationship. With that being said, they obviously want to beat each other's teams. So I don't know, I think that it will definitely raise the stakes for both coaches, but I think at the end of the day, Rhett's kind of like a protege kind of thing for Gus. So I think that it's going to be a really fun game. Even no matter what team loses, I think both coaches just have so much respect and admiration for each other. I think they secretly want the other one to win just for like, that camaraderie. But I think there's going to be a lot of support between the two coaches.
Yeah, on my front, like based off that Sunny thing, one difference I think that's going to be huge this week is that, yeah, Gus may know Rhett's offense, but he doesn't know the players. When it came to Sunny last week, Sunny knew the players, knew how to exploit them. That's
Great
not
point.
as obvious here with Gus because he's never coached these players on this roster. And I think that could be a deciding factor. Last week, defensively, they were able to, TCU obviously just knew the weaknesses on each player and knew how to exactly exploit them on defense. This week, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for UCF just because they don't, I guess Gus doesn't know these players like Sonny did, and I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, obviously, your mentors, playing against your two probably biggest mentors is kind of hard and difficult because they know you. But I think the difference between knowing the players and not knowing them this last week compared to this week is going to be huge in this game.
Now, that's a great fact. So we're going to cut to break really quick, and then we're going to come back and give you a little game preview, the offense, the defense, everything. We've got it, so we'll be right back.
Catching frisbees and building bonds. That's what the SMU Ultimate Frisbee Club is ultimately about.
COVID-19, the whole pandemic and everything really put a damper on some people, but with Ultimate Frisbee, it was kind of a light for people.
The co-ed club of over 30 members meets twice a week to practice for tournaments.
We went from losing most of our games to now we're actually a competitive team. So it's been a strugglesome journey, but it's been really rewarding because the team's grown a lot.
But to the team, the club is also about building community.
There can be a business student, engineering student, music student. It doesn't matter. We're all just on the team together, having fun and just meeting each other, hanging out.
For updates on the SMU Ultimate Frisbee Club, follow them on Instagram at SMU_Ultimate.
Welcome back to the SMU TV studios. We're here giving you a pre-game preview show for tonight. The SMU Mustangs kick off against the UCF Golden Knights in a special Wednesday Night Lights game. Now let's get into the game. So we talked about how Rhett and Gus know each other very well, a prodigy just like you said. And this is the first conference game for both teams. I think something that's really strong to note is that UCF came in the preseason rankings at 3, just above SMU at 4. Now UCF jumped because they lost a lot of guys to the portal, but then gained a lot in the offseason as well, later into the offseason. Now SMU, known for a great throwing game, UCF, known for a great running game. Lots of storylines in this game. So Peter, I'm going to start with you. What are you looking forward to this game being the first conference game?
On the SMU side of the ball, defense, that's just been, a big issue all season. We've struggled to stop defensively. If they can figure out, and our run defense especially really hasn't been that great. If we can figure out how to stop the run, which is obviously, as you said, a huge part of the UCF offense, which is actually very similar. They run a lot of the jet sweeps, the RPOs that TCU does. If we're able to stop those and kind of use film from last week to base off this week, I think we have a great chance on UCF side of the ball. It's just if they can find a way to pound through that SMU defense. I think that's just going to be the biggest storyline. Also, SMU offense, they just need to kind of find a way to get that run game invigorated. It's been good. They've been getting a lot of yards, but it hasn't had any major big plays or game-changing plays. And I think that running the ball is going to be very important for the Mustangs to open up the pass.
Getting back to the defense, do you think they're to blame for the first 2 losses of the season?
I mean, it's an overall team effort in football, but I wasn't too pleased, I guess, with the defensive side of the ball.
They're small.
They're
very,
small.
Yeah.
I mean, at my parents' week and my dad was town, the first thing he texted me right when the game started.
Yeah.
These TCU wide receivers look 3 times the size of SMU's defensive backs. We just don't have the size, and luckily I don't think UCF has any major wide receivers that are those absolute tanks like they were versus
Exactly.
TCU. So that'll be kind of nice, and hopefully that allows us to hone in more on the running game of UCF.
Yes, Grace, now I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Do you also think the defense is a majority to blame for the first 2 tough losses of the season? And what are you thinking about the defense defending that run game and going into our offense, all the weapons we have on offense when it comes to throwing the ball?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that the defense is 100% to blame. Obviously, as Peter said, it's a team effort. I think that there's calls made on both sides, offensively and defensively, that kind of have resulted in those losses. I don't know. I think that in this game specifically, as Peter also said, is the run game is like stopping the run game is the only thing that we can do at this point. UCF's passing offense is not really predictable. It's like we'll have a really hot game one weekend and then really, really not so hot the next weekend. So I don't know. I think it will be really interesting to see how SMU's defense kind of evolves from those two losses against big teams. So I don't know. I'm really unpredicted on this game, and I think that UCF, if they play the way that they usually play, I think we have a good shot. But if they start whipping up some other plays, then I don't know.
Yeah, let's get into the SMU offense a little bit more. About 2 weeks ago before the TCU game, we talked a lot about Rashee Rice, how he led the country in receiving yards. But he, after that TCU game, made it clear he's not the only weapon on that team when it comes to throwing the ball. You have the tight end in RJ Maryland and the wide receiver Jake Bailey, two key players when it comes to Tanner throwing the ball. You know, especially when they're throwing a lot of coverage on Rashee. There's a whole side of the field that's almost like wide open for these two guys to take over, and I think they've done a pretty good job at it. So what are you thinking about the throw game, the offensive weapons on that side of the ball?
We have so much to use in the passing game. We have so many wide receivers, and yes, I know Raw and Tanner Mordecai have like a great connection, but we need to expand our offensive production when it comes to the passing game. There's Bo Corrales. There's the two you mentioned. We have Jordan Kerr. We have all these players that can be playmakers and game changers, but we just aren't utilizing them right. And that's got to be a huge storyline today. I mean, they just came out, the Dallas Morning News came out that story about Bo Corrales. I love him when I first saw him coming here. He's such a great deep threat. And when you have a double coverage on Rashee Rice, that's going to be single coverage for him running down the other sideline. You got to try and target him, try and target Upshaw. We got to target all of them to try and get more offensive production. And also through doing that, you're going to open up Rice a lot more in the passing game, and they can't just double coverage him every time because we're going to exploit them so much using the other wide receivers.
Good point. Let's talk a little bit about SMU's run game now. Trey Siggers is the #1 running back for SMU. He was utilized the most last game during the TCU game. So I'm curious what you think about the run game. Hasn't been super productive. Trey has done kind of all he can do, especially against defenses that are so big and that, you know, they really block the running game. So UCF is a little bit smaller than the Power 5 Maryland and the Power 5 TCU. What do you see in the run game tonight?
I don't know. I'd like to see them use some players other than Trey. I think that our running back room has a lot of untapped potential and some really strong players. And I think some of Trey's plays and kind of the way he handles the ball is a little bit predictable now for some teams, and especially if they're watching back tapes. So I'd like to see some other players get in the mix. I know a lot of them have been working so hard to try to get up to that caliber that Trey's at right now. I don't know. I think that we're going to have to see what UCF's defense is working with tonight, because if we're running a run game and they're playing a passing defense, then that's obviously going to be how we succeed. But I don't think anyone expects a run game from us because we so heavily rely on Rashee. And I think it can't be a one-man show. Inevitably, Rashee is going to go to the draft one day, and we're not going to have him anymore. And we can't just have our one-trick pony go away and have us all sitting here like twiddling our thumbs. So I think that we're going to have to start using the running offense a little bit more if we're going to end up being competitive and kind of achieving those goals, both long-term and short-term in this season.
Let's talk about the future a little bit. You know, Kamar Wheaton got more snaps than he had this season when it came to the TCU game. Former 5-star out of Garland, goes to Alabama, redshirts his freshman year because he has an MCL injury, so he didn't touch the field until he got to SMU, but it was a big deal for SMU, the transfer portal, to get somebody of his caliber. And I just saw spurts of him when he was back in high school in that TCU game. He knows how to read defenses very well. We've talked a lot about Kamar Wheaton and his potential. So I want to know your thoughts on just him and his future and this season and how they can use him.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see him more. I'm a huge Kamar stan. A lot of people are, I think. I mean, I saw something on Twitter. It's Wheaton season. It's kind of fun one, right? I want to see him more. I want to see eventually, and he is going to be our best running back in that room. And right now, he still could be skill-wise. He just hasn't tapped into that potential yet. I think the more we use him, he's also going to adjust more to college level of play, which will make him better. And I really want to see them utilize that more I mean, Trey's a great running back and all, but he doesn't have the speed, the quickness to make those jump cuts and those little
The
moves.
size. Kamar's a
and
lot
Kamar's
bigger than
huge.
him. Right.
And Kamar's has it all.
Yeah.
I think the good thing about Kamar is that he's young. Yeah. And we're going to be able to kind of tap that potential and cultivate it, hopefully, under Coach Lashley. And if he's not getting the playing time and we're not playing a running offense, then why would he stay?
That's also scary. It's transfer portal.
Let's talk about Lashley a little bit once again. I mentioned how it's conference play, where they ranked preseason. Now let's go through it. Houston was at 1. They've definitely fallen since then. They had some pretty bad non-conference losses that aren't actually looking that bad. I mean, they had a loss to Kansas. They got game day this weekend. So, yeah, they're not just a basketball school. Cincinnati's at 2. They came off a season. They lost, obviously, Sauce Gardner, Kobe, Desmond. So it makes sense they dropped to 2. But, you know, they lost to Bama in the Cotton Bowl. So they did have phenomenal season, especially for a group of 5 school. UCF comes in at 3, SMU at 4, Memphis at 5. Now, SMU is the only team in the top 5 to play the other top 5 teams. They're going to get Cincy, Houston, and Memphis at home. This is their top 5 road game. You know, it's a tough way to start the season, but it's also a good opportunity of how to start the season. Lashley told me in an interview going into week 2 that he says, you know, the goal of the season is always to win a conference championship. And then he went into talking about what a head coach should and about how team camaraderie, that's the goal. But they want to win a championship. It's been a while. You know, the marketing campaigns tapping into the Eric Dickerson days. So, Peter, your thoughts on conference, what this game means. Even though it's the first one, it's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, this conference this year, I think probably the last 5 years, you could say, in the American Conference, there's been one front runner, and then everyone else just trying to get into that conference championship game to get a better bowl bid. This year, it's everyone's game. No one is set in stone. Obviously, Cincinnati, I think, is probably arguably the clear favorite right now, as of right now.
Yep.
That obviously can change based on what we've seen. Tulane came out of nowhere.
Friday night.
Yeah, they beat Houston. They're the best. They're power ranking wise, you could put them up top with Cincinnati. I mean, we're up there. We've had 2 teams against 2 teams in Power 5 conferences that are very good. And I mean, and then there's UCF 3-1 coming in. They're only lost to Louisville, an ACC team. There's tons of opportunity for whoever wants to take it, and it just matters who wins games. And for SMU, this is probably the hardest conference game on the schedule since it's away.
Yeah.
And if they're able to win this is the momentum they need. If they can't win this, I think it's going to be a tough season, to be honest. But if they are able to win this, they, I think, can run through conference play and make that conference championship.
And I mean, it's no lie. It's weird to play a game on a Wednesday night, especially when it's been postponed. They weren't expecting to play this late, to travel on a Tuesday. You know, it's just weird. So, Grace, I'm curious, what are you thinking about, you know, what the mindset is going into Wednesday from the team? What do you think it is, you know, playing this weird Wednesday game?
Yeah.
But, you know, ESPN2, we're on linear. They got a promotion. So they're on TV.
Yeah. I would say that I think they're obviously coming off a lot of rest, which will either help us or hurt us. I think that having the bye week obviously made this possible. I don't know how we would have rescheduled that game if we weren't in a bye week this coming weekend. I think that it's just going to be interesting to watch how it all kind of comes down. As we've mentioned, it's our first really challenging road game in the conference. And I just think that every game that we go into, kind of putting this expectation on is kind of when it gets we get a little into the gray area and the murky water. So I'm kind of just hoping that they're coming off feeling refreshed and really ready for the challenge, because point blank, it is a challenge. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a fight, but they have to be ready to put up that fight. And if they're not, then there's no chance for us there.
See, one thing I like about this Wednesday game is it gives us time to recoup from that loss.
Right.
I think
agree.
if this game was on Saturday, I honestly would have picked UCF straight up, spread everything. But now I think that because it's just the coming down from that game, the players won't say it, but that was in their minds probably the biggest game of the season playing TCU. I think that extra break just to get their mental state back is huge, which actually I think has been really good for the Mustangs.
I could not agree more. I think, you know, not playing that game on Saturday, even moving it to Sunday, there's still that eerie feeling of, you know, losing that rival game. First time in a couple years they've lost it to the former head coach. It's never fun. And I really think the mindset has changed moving to Wednesday. You know, everyone's kind of not forgotten because, you know, it's a special, if you like college football, you got a game tonight. It's going to be fun to tune into it. But I think for the most part, people have kind of, you know, put this game to the back burner. It kept getting postponed and everything. So it's going to be interesting tonight to see who capitalizes off of all the movement. So Final thoughts going into tonight, starting with you, Peter.
I like the SMU with the fact that we got that extra rest. It's going to be a toss-up. I feel like a lot of our games, like the next, except for Navy, I think most of the next.
Yeah, we're going
few
into a
games,
pretty tough schedule for the next few weeks.
We have by far the hardest schedule in the conference. There's going to be a lot of toss-up games this year, just like this one. I think it all, as I said, relies on our defensive run defense. If they're able to hone in on that, I think that we'll have plenty of offense. We have all year. We're averaging 38.5 points per game. It just all depends on the front seven of the Mustangs today to stop the run. And if they do that, I think it could be a very good night for SMU.
Yeah, I would take the over. I think it's going to be another shootout.
A lot of points. Which, hey, everyone loves points.
Yes,
Everyone
Grace, your
loves
final
points.
thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I also agree that it's going to be a toss-up. I think that this game has the capability to kind of put a damper on the rest of the season if we take the loss. So I don't know. I'm obviously hoping that we pull out the win. I think that if we run the ball and kind of get some more coverage in the deep field, that there's potential for a win. But it's just going to be a fight.
Awesome. You know, it's in Orlando. I got that Disney magic. Something fun could happen tonight, and we could get the first win in a while, which they're really, really needing, like you've been mentioning. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to the special edition of Press Pass here in the SMU TV studios in Dallas. I'm Grace Lawrence.
I'm Peter Warner.
And I'm Grace Thompson.
Thank you guys again. Tune in tonight, 6:30 p.m. on ESPN2. So obviously there was that channel change, a little promotion for SMU. So tune into that and tune into Press Pass on Monday. We'll be recapping this game. So it'll be fun. So yeah, pony up.
Let's go.